Welcome back. Let's take a look at one of the hardest TOEFL reading passages on my website. This one, on average, is seeing some of the lowest test results from the students. So I'm going to go through all 10 questions and see why students are struggling with this one. Now, let's see. Let's go to my website, IELTS9.com. From the menu, go to TOEFL Reading, Reading Practice Test. And today, we are going to go to number 6. The pit organs of snakes. This is based on a real TOEFL test. And I have made some adjustments and I actually rewrote the whole thing so that it doesn't hopefully infringe on ETS's copyright. So I will put the link in the descriptions down below. So if you want, before watching this video, you can actually go and take the test yourself, see how it goes. And your scores will be actually shown to you at the end of the quiz. Also, I will have them on my website, so we can actually talk about them later on. So, the first thing you should remember for the TOEFL reading is you are not supposed to understand all of it. You are not a zoologist, you are not a biologist, you are not doing anything except answering English questions. So the first thing you have to accept is most of the time, we may not even understand half the things we are reading. Now, obviously, if we had more time, it would be possible to do that. But in 17, 18 minutes, it's probably not going to be possible to read something like this and understand all of it. So if that's the expectation you have, that's the first thing you have to actually get rid of, because that's not going to happen. So let's see. I mean, obviously, if you're good enough, that can happen, but it's not necessary. So let me zoom in a bit. Okay, according to paragraph 1, a rattlesnake will only strike at prey when... Okay, so you could rephrase the question and ask yourself, what makes the rattlesnake attack? Or why do rattlesnakes attack? What's the trigger? Now let's see. It is believed that the facial pits or pit organs located on the heads of some snakes function as a specialized receptor for infrared heat radiation. Okay. When a rattlesnake strikes, okay, so we want to know what triggers that. It appears that the direction of the strike is determined by detecting infrared radiation emitted by its prey. So, okay, they detect infrared. That's what actually makes them attack. Interestingly, a rattlesnake only targets warm-blooded prey, and if the prey is at room temperature, the snake will not strike. Okay, so they only target warm-blooded prey. So there's a heat factor to it. And if the prey is at room temperature, they will not strike. So it has to be warmer than room temperature. So also let me just check the recording stuff. Okay, yeah, it's recording correctly. So now that's going to be the answer. We know the answer. The prey is moving. No, we haven't mentioned that yet. And it doesn't even matter because we already know the answer. The prey is warmer than its surroundings. Correct. The snake is able to see the prey. Vision. Again, I'm sure they will probably mention that later on. But we don't care. We already have the correct answer. And the prey emits chemical odors. They use the word emit to kind of maybe trick you or confuse you. And usually if a student is just looking for keywords, they may go for that. But they don't emit chemical odors. They emit infrared radiations. And yeah, so that's easy. It's a good start. Why does the author mention a cloth-wrapped electric bulb in the passage? Okay, we'll go to that. We see it here. Let's continue from where we left off. However, a blindfolded snake will accurately strike at a dead rat that is warmer than its surroundings. Again, this is 2 more hints for your answers. First of all, a blindfolded snake can still strike accurately, meaning they are not using vision. And also, again, even if the rat is dead, the snake still attacks it when it is warmer than the surrounding. So meaning if it's not warmer than the surrounding, the snake will probably not attack. Since the snake cannot rely on vision, another hint why that option about vision was wrong, due to the blindfold, and still accurately strikes at objects like a moving cloth-wrapped electric bulb. So we know that even if they are blindfolded, they still attack an object like a moving cloth-wrapped electric bulb. So this is just an example of how a warm object is going to trigger the attack I don't know how I'm going to end that sentence. You get the idea. This is another example of an animal, let's say a warm object. It is evident that the pit organs are responsible for detecting the heat of warm objects. Yep, we are going to prove that. But instead of animals, we are going to use another warm object. So that's basically it. They just use this as an to prove that it's not about the smell, because they are using a light bulb. So it's not about the smell. It's not about what the snake sees, because obviously the snake is going to see that this is just it's not an animal, so there is no reason for the snake to attack it. But as long as the object is warmer than the surrounding, the snake still attacks. So to illustrate the size of prey now, to explain how scientists were able to trick blindfolded snakes, maybe they tricked it to attack the light bulb, to eliminate the possibility that snakes look at prey by using a sense of smell. This is actually good. Yes, we removed that factor from the equation, and we actually proved that snakes are not using a sense of smell. To prove that blindfolded snakes will strike more often. No, we don't care. Also, keep in mind, when it mentions something like more often, well, we never mentioned the frequency of the attack or anything of that sort. Immediately, you can remove size and D to explain how scientists were able to trick blindfolded snakes. We didn't really explain. We just said they used this object to see if the snake still attacks or not. And by doing that, they eliminated the possibility that the snakes use a sense of smell. Which of the sentences? Okay, sentence summary. So, however, for this type of question, keep in mind, there are usually 2 or 3 different parts in the sentences that the book gives you. Your job is to, first of all, simplify it, know what the sentence is saying in the easiest way possible. And then find an option that includes at least 1 or 2 of those points that you summarize. And then that's going to be it. The wrong options are going to be either completely false or incomplete. Let's see. However, when objects with a different temperature from their surroundings are introduced into the receptive field around the snake's head, there is a marked change in nerve activity, regardless of the air temperature between the object and the snake. So, okay, imagine you are explaining this to a child. So imagine there is a snake in a room, and we introduce a new object, we bring an object around it, and it doesn't matter how cold or how warm the room is, as long as the object is warmer than the temperature in the room, the snake is going to understand that and actually feel, like a spidey sense, let's say. The snake is going to feel that. And it doesn't matter if the air in the room is cold or hot. Okay, let's see. When objects that differ in temperature from the surroundings enter the receptive field around the head of the snake, the result is a dramatic change in nerve activity. This is true, and it includes almost everything that we need. The temperature of the air in the receptive field around the snake's head has an effect on the nerve activity. No, this is actually completely false. The temperature does not matter, because we said regardless of the temperature, there is going to be a change in nerve activity. If objects in the surrounding area experience a temperature change, nerve activity causes a change. No, definitely not. Also, in this video, I'm not going to go into details of why, because then the video would be way too long. But if you want, with my private students, we generally go over each prompt. But for now, I'm just going to remove the wrong options without going into details. Nerve activity changes when new objects are introduced into the area around the snake's head, true, regardless of how their temperature compares to that of the surrounding air. This is actually not true, because it's using regardless, so maybe that can be confusing for some of the students. But it says, no matter what, hey buddy, why? Regardless of how their temperature, actually this is a good question that I usually ask the students. In this sentence, their refers to what or who? In here, it would be the temperature of the objects. which means the temperature of the object itself is not important, but it is important. The object should have a different temperature than the surrounding. So D is wrong. Let's see. After saying angel, I forgot the option that I wanted to go with. So B is wrong. D is wrong. Now let's see. When objects that differ in temperature from the surrounding enter the receptive field around the snake's head, the result is a dramatic change in nerve activity. It is correct, but it leaves out the part about how the air temperature in the room doesn't matter. But still, if the option C is not better, we'll go with A. If objects in the surrounding area experience a temperature change, we never mentioned the temperature change, so A should be correct. Pay attention to these like small details. It says, if the objects experience a temperature change. We never said the objects are going to change their temperatures. We just said if we introduce an object that has a different temperature than the surroundings. So let's see the word deformation. Now, one thing I would like to mention is if you go to the top of the page, anywhere on my website and go to vocabulary, you'll get 4 pages called word building, prefixes, roots, and suffixes. And that will give you all the information necessary for you to break down words and understand what they mean. So let's start with this one. Shen just makes nouns. You can remove that. Then you have deform. And D as a prefix is not really doing much until you understand the meaning of form. And form, fortunately for us, in this example, it's something that is almost the same in every language. So form meaning shape or style or construction, something like that. And D meaning off or away or generally just off. So deform, it's basically when the form is deviating from what it's supposed to be. So it means something that is not like the rest, something that has a form that is not how it's supposed to be. So let's see. Creation and arrangement, immediately you can remove them. They have nothing to do with this. And then we have alteration and distortion. These are both good options. Alter means change. And similar to words like alternative, alteration, and so on. Alternate as a verb. So that means change. And distortion is distortion, first of all, is the correct answer. It means when something is not represented accurately, when something is not shown how it actually is, or when you hear something, but it's not how it actually sounds. I mean, if you're a guitar player, you probably know about the distortion effects and all that. So distort, it means changing reality in a way that it's not it's not like the real thing anymore. So we would go with distortion, because alteration just means change. It doesn't mean in a correct way, in an accurate way, or in a bad way, or in a good way. Alter just means change. But distort means actually changing reality in a way that it does not represent the real thing. And that's closer to deformation. And we could also read the passage, but in this case, it's not really necessary. I'm going to skip that. Which of the following can be inferred from the discussion about infrared sensation and pit organs in paragraph 3? Inference question, which means we have to read the paragraph, we have to understand it, we have to rephrase it for ourselves, and then hopefully we will get to the answer. So the question is, what can we infer about infrared sensations and pit organs? Okay, let's see. How is infrared radiation detected? The pit is covered by a thin, transparent membrane, and one theory proposes... Okay, so this is one solution, one idea about this. One theory proposes that a temperature increase behind the membrane causes the gas to expand, leading to membrane deformation, which could be sensed by a receptor. Okay, so we don't really care about the details of this idea. Keep in mind, this is not important for us. There is just idea number 1. However, this theory is unlikely, since cutting the membrane and exposing the pit to outside air does not reduce its responsiveness. So even if we cut the membrane that was mentioned in theory A, let's say, in the theory that we mentioned, even if we damage it, there is not going to be any difference in the results that we get. It's still responsive. The responsiveness doesn't go down. This result is inconsistent with the hypotheses that pressure changes are detected. So, basically explaining it to a child. They have this organ. Again, I don't know why you would explain something like this to a child. So let's use just easy words to explain the same thing. So some people think that these receptors are, again, I'm going to butcher this because obviously I'm not a science expert or a snake expert. That was what I meant to say. So some people think it's that membrane around this organ that actually receives this information. But even if we actually damage that membrane, if we damage that layer around this organ, the responsiveness doesn't go down, which means this has no effect. Basically, we are removing that as a contributing factor. So, okay, now let's see the options. Rattlesnakes have special receptors that detect pressure changes in the pit organ membrane. Can we infer that? They have special receptors that detect pressure change. Pressure change? We didn't really talk about pressure at all, so we are going to ignore that. The experiments on pit organ membranes were conducted in a chamber with air at outside temperatures. Honestly, for inference questions, just see if you remember the general idea. And these two, I do not really remember anything about them, so I'm going to ignore both. The idea that pit organs help snakes to locate prey by radiation has been disproved. Okay. Damaged pit organ membranes do not prevent the rattlesnake from detecting a warm animal nearby. And C and D, they are both they are going in the right direction, but the difference between them and why a lot of students actually get confused between the two. The idea that pit organs help snakes to locate prey by radiation has been disproved. So completely disproven. So we know exactly 100% that this thing is not true. It's a very strong it's a very strong way to phrase this. It has been disproved, meaning we know for a fact that it's false. We know for a fact that this thing is not working that way. But this one has a softer tone. It says damaged pit organ membranes do not prevent rattlesnakes from detecting a warm animal nearby, which is exactly the result of the research. So yes, we understood that even if we damage the membranes, the rattlesnake is not going to behave differently. There is not going to be a difference in responsiveness. They are still going to detect a warm animal nearby. So this is true, 100%. Now, does it completely disprove the idea? This idea? Well, we don't know. We don't care. This is the direct result of the research. According to paragraph 4, which of the following tends to exclude a photochemical explanation for the sensory function of snake pit organs? I'm not going to lie, I have read this sentence probably hundreds of times in the classes with other students. I still don't really understand it, and I don't want to, and we don't need to. That's the good news, actually. Let me just refresh so we get another timer for the quiz. Just 1 second. Okay, I'm going to skip everything and go to the same question. So let's see. According to paragraph 4, which of the following excludes, meaning not include, the opposite of include, a photochemical explanation for the sensory function of snake pit organs? Okay, so let's see, first of all, what do we know about the photochem? First of all, what is this explanation? How does it explain the sensory function of the snake pit organs? And then we'll come to the options. I'm not going to read them now. It will only confuse us. So I'll go to paragraph 4. 2 other possibilities remain. And again, keep in mind, I haven't read the passage. I don't really care. And we don't really need to understand all of it. Let's just go to each part whenever we need it. Everything else we can ignore. So to summarize the whole thing for myself, I'll say, okay, we are trying to understand how snakes attack. We did some experiments. We know that they follow warm objects, but how do they know what is warm and what is not? And what helps them understand this whole thing? We are trying to answer that question. We had one theory, it was disproven, and not disproven, but we got different results, meaning that wasn't the real answer. Now we have two other possibilities. Either the process is photochemical, meaning blah, 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 or now I want the other one, or the pit organs detect a slight rise in temperature caused by infrared radiation. So it's either photochemical or it's the temperature change. So those are the two possible answers to this question. The low quantum energy of infrared radiation emitted from a mammal's body makes a photochemical effect on a pigment unlikely. Okay, so how do we know a photochemical answer is not the actual answer to this question? Again, I'm trying to avoid any technical terms from this passage when I explain it, because there is no reason for us to understand how snakes behave. All we need is, okay, this thing that we said is unlikely. Why? Because there is a low quantum energy when we talk about infrared radiations that are emitted from the mammal's body. So basically, to summarize it, the infrared that comes off of mammals' bodies doesn't really have a high level of energy. And that means this process is probably not photochemical. Now let's see. Only lasers can produce the exact wavelength. No. Light-sensitive pigments are located in the eyes, but not in the pit organs of the snakes. No. Compounds sensitive to infrared radiation have not yet been identified in snake pit organs. No. The infrared radiation from a snake's prey has too little energy to affect the snake's pigment. Very nice. That is what I was looking for. And again, now you see why I didn't read the options before reading the passage. This is way too complicated. I have no idea what these things are even talking about. I'll just get the answer myself, and then I'll find the option that is closest to it. If you try to read them and cross-reference them one by one, you are going to spend a lot of time, and you will most likely run out of time after like 5 questions if you do it that way. Now let's see. The word substantially. Well, it means significantly. So first of all, I'll just mark it here. But again, I want to keep this video short, so I cannot get into the details of this. But yeah, for now, I'm going to skip this one. According to paragraph 5, all of the following support the idea that a snake uses its pit organs for stereoscopic perception, except the fact. So there are 3 true options. One is false. And usually this is where students make mistakes, because our brain automatically looks for the correct answer when we have a test. But this time we actually have to look for the false. And what happens usually for a lot of students is they read this, you go and check it in the passage, you're like, oh, this is true, so it's not the correct answer. And by the second and third option, they usually forget that they were looking for the wrong option and not the false one. And then when they see, oh, B is actually true, they just mark it as true and move on. So just make sure you keep reminding yourself that you are looking for the false option. According to paragraph 5, all of the following are true about stereoscopic perception, except. Okay, let's go to paragraph 5. So the last one. Stereoscopic. Scope meaning vision or field, basically the, let's say field, vision, or the things we see. And stereo meaning two. And okay, stereoscopic, and it even has the word vision. So their vision basically is based on 2 sources, let's say. Again, if someone is a snake expert reading this, or hearing me talk about it, they are probably going to have a heart attack. Can the pit organs be used to perceive the source of infrared radiation similarly to how our 2 eyes provide stereoscopic vision? So the organs that they have, are they basically working the same way that our eyes work? This seems likely. Okay, so this idea is likely. the other ones that we mentioned were unlikely. Based on the accuracy with which snakes can strike their prey and research on brain activity. Okay, so we have done a lot of research, and we think the pit organs are stereoscopic, or at least similar to our stereoscopic vision. When infrared radiation reaches the pit organs, electric activity is recorded in whatever, the part of the brain associated with the optic nerve. Okay, so this part receives the information, the infrared radiation. This is significant, as although the pit organ nerves are separate from the optic nerve, the same brain region processes both visual and infrared information. Okay. So the same part of the brain that analyzes visual data also analyzes infrared data. The optic tectum is divided into left and right sections. Okay, let's see. So it has a lot left and right. So basically stereoscopic, let's say. Each receiving input from both eyes through the optic chiasma. I don't even know what that word is. Where the optic nerves cross. Again, this is this should be good news for you, because if, as a teacher, I don't know what this means, and I'm still getting 10 out of 10 questions every single time there's a new passage, then you don't, also, I mean, this is not new for me. I have already taught this passage many times, but doesn't really matter. Even if it was a new one, I would still ignore this word and get the correct answer. So you don't need to understand every word. You just have to understand what's happening, the general idea. Let's see. The optic tectum is divided into left and right sections. Each one receives input from both eyes. Many neurons in the optic tectum respond to stimulation of the pit organ on the opposite side of the head. This mirrors how visual information is processed. I'm going to ignore the clause after that. So let's see. Okay. Information from the two pit organs is seemingly coordinated and interpreted similarly. Every time, let's say. Thus, it seems that the pit organs provide stereoscopic perception. We understand that. Okay, so we gave 3 different reasons why stereoscopic perception is a viable, is a good answer to the question that we had. The same part of the brain that deals with stereoscopic vision is activated by infrared. Yeah, this is true. Stimulation of a pit organ has an effect on the tectum on the opposite side of the brain. This is true. I remember we said it. A snake is able to strike its prey with precision. This is true, obviously. The nerves of the right eye and the right pit organ are completely separate from the nerves of the left eye and the left pit organ. So the nerves of the right eye and the right pit organ are completely separate from... They were not completely separate. If I remember correctly, we said actually they are somewhat connected. They coordinate, they work together, and they basically communicate with each other. So again, I didn't even check to see which part of the test had that answer. I just remembered that the general idea was, okay, these two things work together, that both sides are basically communicating with each other. Sentence placement. Again, I'm not going to go into the details of it. I think I have another video for that, but also we'll go through it in our lessons. So I'll just get right to it. Infrared radiation can be perceived directly by a few animals that have specialized sense organs that respond to this type of radiation. So every time you have a sentence placement question, you have to ask yourself, what comes before this? What comes after it? Now for this one, we don't have a cohesive device like however, but, furthermore, additionally, and so on. So to me, this could be the beginning of a paragraph or the beginning of a new topic, let's say. So it can be, I mean, obviously after probably we introduce what infrared radiation is and why do we care about that. It can be perceived directly by a few animals that have, so then we probably mention the animals. So first we say there are a few animals that have a specialized sense organ that responds to this radiation. So there are some animals that can do this thing, whatever that thing is. So what follows is probably an example. So it is thought that the facial pits of snakes have receptors. When a rattlesnake strikes, okay, so this is an example of the animals. So I will mark A as a possible answer. And let's see, a rattlesnake. Okay, so the next sentence is also about a rattlesnake. After that, any option after this is going to be incorrect because we are starting the paragraph by talking about infrared receptors and then examples of animals. Basically, we mention animals and then we are talking about the examples of animals. So obviously, anything after that is not going to be correct. So between A and B, B is probably not going to be correct because in this sentence, we talk about rattlesnakes. And in this one, we are also still talking about rattlesnakes. It's probably not a good idea to separate them, especially because we want to first mention the word animals and then give an example of it. So A is going to be the right answer. You don't need to read everything else. Now, this is probably the hardest question for a lot of students because, first of all, they think they have to remember the whole thing to answer correctly. And also, they keep going back to cross-reference, and that takes a lot of time. The good news is you only have to pay attention to what you have here. And they already give you a sentence. They have given you this as a reference. You don't need to go back and read the whole thing again and again. There are three things basically you have to make sure of before choosing an answer. First, it has to be general. Two, it has to be true, obviously. And three, it has to somehow relate to this sentence that they give you. So, some snakes seem to be able to locate and strike at warm-blooded prey solely through the use of pit organs. Well, it's true. I remember that it's true. And it's general. Doesn't say what kind of snakes. It just says some snakes can do it. And it is true. And let's see. Studies suggest that the facial pit organs of certain snakes function as infrared sensors. Well, yeah, that's a good one. I'll take it. The pit organs of snakes seem to be sensitive to a variety of stimuli, including sound. No. Immediately you can remove that. It's false. It doesn't matter if it's general. Doesn't matter if it relates to the sentence. It's actually false. The precision with which snakes are able to locate prey can be accounted for by the intersection of the optic nerves and nerves from pit organs. Well, now this is where many students make mistakes. I do not care if it's true or false. I have two other criteria that I can pay attention to. So first of all, does it relate to what we mentioned here? Well, it's not really about the infrared and it's not really about the pit organs. It's about the accuracy of how they locate the prey. It's very specific. It's too specific for my liking. So I'm not going to go with this one, even if it's true, which I don't know. It may be, may not be. I'm not going to go back and look at the whole text, the whole passage to find out whether this is true or not. Because it's not general enough for me, I'm going to skip that. Snakes with pit organs will strike at dead rats at room temperature only when the rats are dragged across a cage. Well, first of all, this is one example. And even if it was true, which I do not think it is, it would still be just one example. And I don't know, for now, I would put it as a definite no. Experiments, so E and F have to be correct. Experiments provide strong evidence that snake pit organs are sensitive to temperature changes caused by infrared radiations. True, and it's general, and it doesn't say which experiment. It just says we have some experiments, and it doesn't say they prove 100%. It just says they provide strong evidence. So I like language like this. I usually avoid options with always, never, no, and things that are easily proven or disproven. Studies of brain activity suggest that the two facial pits provide snakes with stereoscopic perception for the exact location of prey. Yeah, this is true. I remember this. It was the last part that we talked about. So it has to be this way. It is very nice. Very nice. Not bad. Not too shabby, huh? So that's going to be it for this video. If you want to do the same test, just go to IELTS9.com. I'll put it in the descriptions down below. Go to TOEFL, TOEFL Reading, practice test, and you'll get the same page that I'm looking at right now. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one.